The year my son turned 5, I discovered he was allergic to mangoes. It was also on this day that my husband and his mistress's secret was completely shattered before my eyes. They had stolen my life, making me raise someone else's illegitimate child for 5 years, while abandoning my own flesh and blood in an orphanage to fend for itself. I smiled. From that day on, I became the most loving mother in the entire city. For that fake son, I spoiled him to the heavens. If he wanted a game console, I bought the most expensive one. If he got into fights, I praised him for his bravery. If he hated school, I simply donated a building to get him into a prestigious private school. Everyone praises me for loving my son as if he were my own life, but only I know that I am waiting for him to rot to the core. Chapter 1. At my son Stellan's 5th birthday party, a small piece of mango mousse cake nearly cost him his life. At that moment, I was busy greeting guests when I suddenly heard my mother-in-law scream. Turning around, I saw Stellan lying on the ground, his little face flushed a purplish red, making a terrifying huffing sound in his throat, with red rashes covering his entire body. As the ambulance wailed its way to us, I held his swollen little hand, my mind completely blank. Outside the hospital emergency room, the doctor removed his mask, his tone tinged with reproach. Severe allergic reaction, mango allergy. As parents, didn't you know your child is allergic to mangoes? I looked utterly bewildered. Both my husband Florian and I can eat mangoes, and there's no history of food allergies anywhere in our family. The doctor gave us a strange look. Allergic tendencies are usually hereditary, though there are rare cases of mutation. Florian's expression instantly turned awkward, and he hurriedly insisted, it must be a genetic mutation. That night, Stellan was out of danger and fell into a deep sleep in the hospital room. Sitting by the bed, I gazed at that little face that bore a 5 or 6 out of 10 resemblance to Florian, when a chilling thought suddenly pierced my mind. Mango allergy is a dominant genetic trait. If neither parent has it, the probability of a child having the allergy is extremely low, unless... All the details I had previously overlooked now surged through my mind like a tidal wave. Stellan's toe shape was completely different from Florian's. Florian had the standard Greek foot, with the second toe being the longest, while Stellan's toes were almost level. Stellan's blood type was O, while both Florian and I were type A. The doctor said it was possible, but the probability was absurdly low. My hands began to tremble uncontrollably. The next day, I used the excuse of taking Stellan for a follow-up checkup to secretly collect a sample of his oral mucosa. I also plucked a strand of my own hair and anonymously mailed both to an authoritative paternity testing agency in a neighboring province. During the 3 days of waiting for the results, I took care of Stellan as if nothing was wrong, dealt with Florian, and even acted more gentle and considerate than before. But every night, looking at the child sleeping soundly beside me, that icy suspicion would gnaw fiercely at my heart. On the 4th day, the package arrived. I locked myself in the study, trembling as I tore open the envelope, flipping directly to the last page. The conclusion in black and white was like a red-hot iron rod, brutally piercing my eyes, my brain, my heart. Excludes Elsie as the biological mother of Stellan. The world instantly fell silent, weightless, and cold. I collapsed into the chair, clutching the paper tightly in my hand, my knuckles turning white and cracking. There were no tears, no screams, only a suffocating, hollow roar echoing endlessly in my skull. He was not my son. For the past 5 years, I had poured all my maternal love into him, developing chronic back pain from late-night feedings, staying awake all night at the sound of his cough, shedding tears when he stumbled while learning to walk, crying tears of joy when he first called me mom. All my efforts, all my love, all my hopes had been given to this child who shared no blood with me. And what about my own flesh and blood? Where is he? Alive or dead? Does Florian know? Was he involved in this conspiracy? I remember the awkward expression on his face when he explained genetic mutation. This isn't some fantasy novel, how could such a coincidence happen? So, he knew all along. That woman, the one who gave birth to this child and sent him to me, the one who stole my life, who is she? Is she hiding in some dark corner right now, laughing at my foolishness? I don't know how much time passed, but the light outside the window shifted from bright to dim. Slowly, I stood up and walked to the mirror. The woman in the reflection was pale as paper, with dark circles under her eyes and chapped lips. But the eyes that were once filled with gentleness and exhaustion now burned with a strange light, cold, hard, and venomous. Slowly, I looked at myself in the mirror, pulled back the corners of my mouth, and smiled. Good, this is just perfect. Steal my life? Make me raise someone else's bastard? Fine. This son, I'll raise him. I'll raise him well, so well that he'll be ruined, so well that he'll be destroyed. On the third day, the sun was shining brightly. I tied on an apron and was frying cartoon-shaped eggs in the kitchen, humming a tune, Stellan's favorite. Florian came downstairs yawning, the collar of his shirt stained with a suspicious perfume scent that wasn't mine. He glanced at Stellan, who was waiting to be fed at the dining table and still complaining that the milk wasn't sweet enough, then looked at me and asked casually, "Why are you up so early today?" I placed the little rabbit-shaped fried egg on Stellan's plate, looked up at him with a smile, the corners of my eyes crinkling. It suddenly occurred to me that being a mom means giving it your all. Maybe I was too strict with him before. I reached out and ruffled Stellan's hair, my gesture unusually affectionate. Our Stellan needs to eat more, grow strong. Whatever you want to play, whatever you want to do, Mom supports you. Stellan's eyes lit up, his childish voice tinged with arrogance. Mom. I don't want to go to kindergarten today. I want to buy that new giant robot. My classmate's dad bought one for him. If it were any other day, I would have patiently explained the reasoning and perhaps compromised by promising to go on the weekend. But today, I just slightly furrowed my brows, putting on a pained and helpless expression as I looked at Florian. If the child doesn't want to go, let it be. It's rare for him to make a request. That robot, is it very expensive? Florian was scrolling through his phone with his head down. Hearing this, he waved his hand dismissively, just buy it. It's normal for boys to like robots. Missing one day of kindergarten won't hurt. Thank you, Dad. Mom is the best. Stellan cheered, planting a greasy kiss on my cheek with a loud smack. I endured this kiss, the smile on my face flawless, yet the stagnant water in my heart quietly grew a layer of greasy, oily filth. Chapter 2. The robot was bought, nearly half a person's height, costing as much as an ordinary salaried worker's annual income. Stellan played excitedly all morning, but by the afternoon, he was already bored, dismantling the parts and scattering them all over the floor. I simply had the nanny clean it up without a word of reproach. In the evening, under the pretext of taking the child to the park to play, I took Stellan alone for the first time into that private detective agency located in the old city, its facade low-key and even somewhat shabby. The man who received me was named Conrad, his eyes as sharp as an eagle's, yet he spoke little. I pushed a thick envelope across the table, containing some basic information about Florian, along with the extremely limited clues I could provide about the possible woman, Florian's frequent business trips over the past 2 years, traces of a specific brand of perfume, and several unmarked numbers in his call records with unusually long call durations. I want to know everything. My voice was steady. Who is the woman he's seeing outside, and when did it all start? And, I took a deep breath, suppressing the trembling in my heart. 5 years ago, on April 17th, at the Municipal Maternal and Child Health Hospital, all the women who gave birth in the same delivery room as me, or around the same time, along with their children's information, I want it all. Detective Conrad lifted his eyelids and gave me a deep look. Without asking further questions, he simply nodded and accepted the envelope and materials. When I walked out of the agency, the city lights were just beginning to glow. Stellan was clamoring for KFC, so I took his hand and headed toward the bright fast food sign across the street. Our reflections in the glass window looked as close as ever. I wiped the tomato sauce from the corner of his mouth, watching him devour the fried chicken ravenously, and silently thought to myself, eat up, eat more. Junk food, what a wonderful thing. 3 days later, Conrad called, and we arranged to meet at an even more secluded tea house. Florian's mistress is named Alina, 27 years old. She used to be a singer at the Charm Bar, and now she's nominally employed at a small trading company, but in reality, she's mainly supported by Florian. They've been together for nearly 7 years. Conrad pushed a few secretly taken photos toward me. The woman in the photos was very young, with permed wavy hair, exquisite makeup, and a slender figure. She was smiling brightly as she held Florian's arm. In one photo, she even had a noticeably pregnant belly, with Florian's hand resting on her abdomen. From the side, his expression was a tenderness I had never seen before. 7 years. It turns out they had already gotten involved shortly after we got married. A sharp cramp twisted in my stomach, and I forced myself to endure the discomfort, my fingers tracing over Alina's face in the photo. Regarding the delivery records, Conrad paused, pulling out a sheet of paper, the records from the municipal maternity hospital from April 16th to 18th that year show no one in the same ward as you who matches. But half an hour after you, there was a woman named Nix who gave birth naturally to a baby boy. The registration information was incomplete, she used a fake ID at the time, and the address was also fake. The hospital had management loopholes back then. Nix? Alina. I stared at the two names, my eyes aching from dryness. Can we find this Nix? It's very difficult, the information itself is false. However. Conrad handed over another blurry photocopy, as if taken from some old file. I checked the orphanage's records of abandoned infants from that year. On the morning of April 18th, the city orphanage received a healthy baby boy, approximately 1 day old, with no items on him that could prove his identity. The time of reception perfectly aligns with when you gave birth in the hospital and when that Suyu was discharged. The orphanage, my biological son, like an unwanted piece of trash, was discarded there. It felt as if a large hole had been torn in my heart, letting cold air hiss in. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, the slight pain keeping me alert. Where is that child, now? He's still at that orphanage, number 07-0418. The name was given by the institution, Zephyr. My son has lived for 5 years in a place without family, without a birthday, without parents, like a speck of dust. I lowered my head, took a few deep, ragged breaths, and when I looked up again, my face showed no trace of emotion. Conrad, please keep an eye on Florian and Alina for me. Also, I pushed another, thicker envelope across the table, arrange something for me. I want to anonymously sponsor this child named Zephyr at the orphanage, cover everything from tuition to living expenses, all to the highest standard. But under no circumstances should he or the orphanage find out who the sponsor is. Use your own channels as the point of contact. Conrad glanced at me once more and nodded. Understood. Stepping out of the tea room, the sunlight was blinding. I opened my phone, looked at the photo of Stellan laughing carelessly on the lock screen, and gently tapped his cheek. The game has begun, my good son. The first step is to let him grow up healthy and happy. Chapter 3. Stellan, come, try this, the new double cheese burst burger. I smiled and pushed the massive burger piled high with patties, cheese, and fried onion rings in front of Stellan, who was 5.5 years old. Beside it was a large serving of fries sprinkled with salt and cheese powder, along with a 1.5-liter cup of iced cola. Stellan's eyes lit up as he grabbed the burger and took a big bite, sauce smeared all over his face. The nanny whispered with some concern, "Madam, isn't it unhealthy for a child to eat so much fried food?" I read in a book that. I interrupted her, my smile unchanged but my tone leaving no room for doubt. What child these days doesn't eat fast food once in a while? Happiness is what matters most. Our Stellan is growing, and he needs to eat more to grow strong and healthy. I took a tissue and gently wiped the sauce from the corner of Stellan's mouth. Isn't that right, sweetie? Is it delicious? Delicious. Mom is the best. Stellan mumbled, taking another big gulp of Coke. When Florian came home in the evening and saw the burger wrappers still on the table, he frowned. You fed him this again? Didn't the doctor say we need to focus on a balanced diet? I was wiping Stellan's hands when I looked up, showing just the right amount of grievance and determination, just this once. Didn't you see how he got pushed by another kid at kindergarten today? It's because our Stellan isn't strong enough. Boys need to be sturdy so no one dares to bully them. Stellan immediately complained, Daddy. A classmate took my toy. And pushed me. Florian's frown eased a bit as he walked over and patted Stellan's head, who bullied my son. Daddy will talk to their teacher tomorrow. No need, I quickly said, kids roughhousing is normal. If we raise our child to be strong, naturally no one will dare to mess with him. I nestled close to Florian and softened my voice, Honey, I know you're concerned about health, but look at those so-called healthy recipes, the kids don't like them, and even if they force themselves to eat, they don't gain weight. Why don't we just go with the flow? Let them eat what they love, and when they're happy, their health will naturally improve. It's not like our family can't afford it, right? Florian watched Stellan happily burping after drinking his cola and finally nodded, All right, you handle it. Just don't go overboard. Of course, I wouldn't go overboard. I simply made fried foods, sugary drinks, and puffed snacks a regular part of Stellan's diet. Breakfast could be chocolate cake with sweet milk, lunch was provided by the school as a nutritious meal, but dinner and late-night snacks were always Stellan's favorites, fried chicken, pizza, and grilled meat. Weekends were dedicated food adventures, hitting every trendy high-calorie spot without missing a single one. At the same time, under the pretense of enhancing his physical fitness and cultivating masculinity, I enrolled Stellan in intense sports classes like taekwondo, boxing, and rugby. I wasn't sending him to learn discipline. Instead, I encouraged him to unleash his nature and be bold in confrontation. When he kicked another child and made them cry for the first time in taekwondo class, the coach spoke to me about it. I proudly replied, Oh, this just shows that our Stellan is strong. He learns quickly. Coach, please take extra care, be as strict as needed. Money is no issue. As for academic classes? Naturally, it was all about happy education. If he couldn't grasp pinyin or basic math in kindergarten, I didn't push him to learn. I personally communicated with the teacher, saying, Our family environment is quite relaxed. We don't want our child to feel pressured too early. Childhood is only a few years, having fun is what matters most. The teacher gently reminded me of the need to prepare him for the transition to elementary school. I smiled and donated a batch of brand new picture books and toys to the kindergarten, saying, I believe that learning through play is the best form of education. Florian initially had some reservations, but seeing Stellan visibly grow stronger at a rapid pace, he gradually came to accept this theory. Look, a child of 5.5 years old already weighs close to some 7 or 8-year-olds, and his height is shooting up quickly. His little arms and legs are chubby, giving the impression of being strong. I would often whisper in his ear, as long as the child is healthy and lively, that's what matters, and grades aren't important, our family has a solid foundation, enough for him to spend for several lifetimes. Florian found this quite agreeable and would even occasionally pinch Stellan's cheek with pride, saying, You little rascal, eating so much, you're quite strong. Chapter 4. The 6 years of elementary school were a golden period for Stellan's physical and personality development, both growing wildly. Under my scientific feeding and happy education, Stellan ballooned like an inflated balloon. By the age of 10, his weight had become severely excessive, yet his height also shot up, towering over his peers. His skin grew rough from long-term consumption of high-sugar, high-fat foods, and pimples began to appear on his forehead and cheeks. Due to his obesity and domineering attitude, he had few friends at school, which only made him more dependent on me and more unrestrained in his behavior. He learned to solve every problem with his fists. If a deskmate accidentally knocked his eraser off, he would push both the person and the desk to the ground. If a class monitor noted his name for being noisy, he would chase them to the bathroom and corner them in a stall to threaten them. During PE class, if he couldn't run fast enough, he would deliberately trip the students ahead of him. Every time I was called to school by the teacher, I followed the same routine. First, I would apologize with an impeccable, sincere attitude, I'm sorry, teacher, for causing you trouble. Then I tried hard to explain, our Stellan might just be a bit too strong and straightforward, but he actually has a good heart. Then came all sorts of compensation. We'll take full responsibility for the medical expenses and emotional damages of the injured child. Also, I noticed the school's playground facilities are a bit outdated. Our company can sponsor a batch of new fitness equipment. Finally, I made a promise, I'll definitely have a serious talk with him when we get home. Thank you for your concern, teacher. The homeroom teacher was an experienced veteran who had spoken with me privately several times, expressing deep concern. Stellan's mom, this can't go on. It's not just behavioral issues, his weight and health are worrying, and he has no interest in studying at all. In class, he either sleeps or causes trouble. This time, he failed 3 subjects in the final exams. My eyes immediately reddened, and I took out a tissue to wipe away non-existent tears. Teacher, I know you have the child's best interests at heart. But this child was weak when he was young, and we only hope for his safety and health. As for academics, we really don't push him. Could you perhaps be a little more lenient with him? If possible, could you exempt him from homework and such? I'm afraid the pressure might be too much for him and harm his health. The teacher looked at my heartbroken expression over my son and hesitated to speak, ultimately letting out a sigh. Under my lenient parenting, Stellan grew increasingly bold. He began extorting money from younger students to buy snacks and game cards, and he was caught red-handed on surveillance. The parents of the other children made a scene at the school, threatening to call the police. This time, Florian was alarmed. In front of me, he picked up a belt and struck Stellan a few times, causing Stellan to burst into loud sobs. I immediately rushed forward to stop him, shielding Stellan behind me, and tearfully shouted at Florian, "What are you doing? The child is still young and doesn't understand things properly. Can't you teach him slowly? Do you have to resort to violence? What if you hurt him?" I then turned to the furious parents, instantly changing my expression, and pulled out a stack of cash from my bag. "Please calm down. The child doesn't know any better. We'll compensate you, double the amount." Stellan, apologize quickly. Stellan, standing behind me, sniffled and mumbled an insincere "I'm sorry." The parents looked at the thick stack of money, then at Florian and me, and left cursing under their breath. Florian's face turned livid with anger. "You just keep spoiling him. Sooner or later, you'll spoil him into big trouble." Holding Stellan, who was crying so hard he was hiccuping, I retorted sharply, "Me spoiling him? Isn't he your son, Florian? How much have you ever cared for him? All you know is to hit him when something goes wrong. If you have the guts, why don't you teach him at home every day? That secretary at the company sure keeps you busy going out for social engagements." Florian's expression changed instantly, his eyes flickering slightly, and his tone softened. What nonsense are you talking about? Those company social events are part of the job." He glanced at Stellan, waved his hand impatiently, and said, all right, be more careful next time. Elsie, you talk to him properly." He turned and walked away. I knew he was probably going to find Alina to soothe his emotions. Watching his retreating figure, I gently patted Stellan's back, a cold smile curling at the corner of my mouth. Meanwhile, with support from the orphanage and my anonymous funding, Zephyr grew like a blade of grass in a stone crevice, tenacious and silent. In the photos Conrad regularly sent, he gradually shed the childishness of a young boy, his eyes growing increasingly calm and bright. He excelled in his studies, especially in mathematics, where he scored nearly perfect marks every time. The director of the orphanage said that Zephyr was particularly sensible, helping out with chores whenever he had free time. He didn't speak much but loved reading, often spending half a day immersed in books. Under the name of a caring individual, I funded the renovation of the orphanage's library and added a large number of books, particularly in mathematics and the natural sciences. I also happened to fund a mountain area education assistance project led by retired mathematics Professor Lysander. To express his gratitude, Professor Lysander offered to volunteer at the welfare home once a week, specifically tutoring children with potential. I knew the weight of Professor Lysander's reputation. He was a founding figure in the domestic olympiad mathematics community, with students everywhere. To receive his guidance was an opportunity countless competition students dreamed of. And my Zephyr seized that opportunity. Professor Lysander once excitedly mentioned to me that there was a child named Zephyr at the welfare home who showed exceptional talent in mathematics. He grasps concepts instantly, stays focused, and has the makings of a promising talent. Listening to Professor Lysander's praise for Zephyr, I imagined him listening attentively in class, and my heart ached with a bittersweet ache. My son should have been by my side, enjoying the best resources and receiving the finest education. But now, he can only rely on the kindness of strangers and meager support, struggling in a closed-off environment. Yet this pain quickly transformed into an even more resolute venom, burning toward those who had stolen his life. Chapter 5. I immediately enrolled Stellan in an expensive elite summer camp with the theme Wilderness Survival and Team Building, located in a remote mountainous area. The camp claimed to foster independence and courage in children, but in reality, it was loosely managed and filled with spoiled kids like Stellan. The so-called team-building activities soon turned into forming cliques and bullying the weak. When Stellan returned, his skin was tanned, and he had grown stronger, with a hint of roguishness and ferocity in his expression. He excitedly told me how he had pranked his teammates in the mountains, how he had secretly brought snacks without getting caught, and how he had conquered the most beautiful female instructor at the camp. I patted his head and praised him with a smile. Our Stellan is so amazing, just like a little man now. In private, I gave the summer camp director a generous red envelope, saying, "The child had a great time. Thank you for your hard work." As for Alina, through Conrad's surveillance, I knew she was living quite comfortably. Florian bought her a new car and rented a larger apartment. She often flaunted luxury goods, travels, and a free, beautiful life on her social media. Occasionally, she would inadvertently reveal a corner of baby products or share parenting articles with captions like, "My baby must grow up healthy and strong." She thought I didn't know she existed, or that I was hopelessly foolish, basking in the superiority of the legal wife foolishly raising my son for me. Once, Conrad even captured her chatting with a friend in a cafe. Pointing to a secretly taken photo on her phone, of me playing with Stellan at an amusement park, she said smugly, "Look, he's being raised plump and healthy, even better than if he were with me." Some women are just lucky, they don't have to give birth themselves and get a ready-made son to be filial to them. Lucky? Filial? I turned off the surveillance video and walked into Stellan's room. 12-year-old Stellan, already nearly 6 feet tall and weighing over 180 pounds, was curled up in a gaming chair, wearing headphones, completely absorbed in playing a game. He cursed under his breath as blood and gore splattered across the screen, while the room was filled with the sour stench of takeout and sweat. I gently closed the door. "Yes, you've raised him so well. Your son is about to show you a whole new level of filial piety." For the transition to middle school, Stellan's grades were a complete mess. He didn't even meet the minimum score for the worst private middle school. But that didn't stop me. I chose a private middle school in the city known for its elite education but actually famous for its lenient management and respect for individuality, Jade International Middle School. This school had high tuition fees, but its admission standards were quite flexible, especially for students with special talents or outstanding family backgrounds. I met with the principal of Giada, and after donating a development fund large enough to build a new teaching building, the principal smiled and said that Stellan was lively, outgoing, and hands-on, exactly the kind of diverse talent our school needs, granting him special admission. Giada truly lived up to its reputation. The campus was as luxurious as a 5-star hotel, with students who were either wealthy or influential. School rules were practically non-existent, and teachers only focused on teaching, not discipline. At Giada, Stellan completely let himself go. He quickly gathered a group of followers, relying on his physical advantage and reputation. Skipping classes, smoking, fighting, and bullying classmates became routine for him. He brought hair dye to school and dyed his hair a striking shade of blue. The teachers turned a blind eye. He openly defied the teacher in class, making the female teacher cry. When I received the call, I rushed to the school immediately, not to apologize, but to file a complaint against the teacher for inappropriate teaching methods that harmed the child's self-esteem, demanding that the school replace the teacher. The most serious incident occurred when he took a dislike to a boy, gathered some people, cornered him in a garage, and broke 2 of his ribs with a baseball bat. The boy's family had some influence and immediately reported it to the police. Florian and I were called to the police station. The other parents were emotional and demanded severe punishment. Florian's face turned pale with anger as he repeatedly apologized, expressing his willingness to cover all medical expenses and compensation. However, I stepped in front of Stellan and said to the police and the other parents, "Officer, when kids fight, both sides are usually at fault. I know our Stellan, he may be mischievous, but he would never hit someone without reason. Did the other boy say something offensive or do something provocative first? Young people have hot tempers and can act impulsively. Besides, our child was injured too." I pulled Stellan over, rolled up his sleeve, and revealed a small scrape he got from playing ball earlier. "Look, this injury isn't minor either. How about this, we'll accept the compensation, whatever the amount. But since they're all minors, education should be the priority. Having a criminal record would affect the child for a lifetime." I then turned to the other parents, softening my tone. "I know you're worried about your child, and putting myself in your shoes, I'm worried too. How about this, aside from the medical expenses, we'll also provide additional compensation for nutrition and emotional distress. The amount is negotiable. The kids are still in the same school, and they might even become friends in the future. Making things too tense won't do anyone any good, right?" Florian tugged at me, scolding in a low voice, "Elsie, keep it down." I shook off his hand, my eyes reddening. "Did I say something wrong? Stellan is your son too. Are you just going to stand by and watch him get a criminal record?" In the end, with the connections Florian pulled, the heavy money I spent, and the other family's reluctance to completely burn bridges, the matter concluded with mutual assault, resolved through mediation. Chapter 6. Stellan received a major demerit from the school and was suspended for a week. When he returned home, Florian flew into a rage, smashing a cup. "Look at what you've spoiled him into. Now he dares to break someone's ribs. Next time, will he kill someone?" Stellan stiffened his neck, his face full of defiance. While signaling Stellan with my eyes to go back to his room, I tearfully complained to Florian, "Now you know how to yell? Do you ever usually take care of him? It's always business dinners or business trips. Is it all my fault that our son has turned out like this? I worry myself sick every day, just wanting him to live comfortably. Don't you know what that school is like? In that kind of environment, how can a child learn well? If you had the ability, you'd get him into a key middle school." My crying left Florian flustered and annoyed, and knowing he was in the wrong, he eventually stormed out, slamming the door. I knew he was most likely going to seek comfort from Alina again. And Alina would probably use her gentle and considerate nature to highlight my unreasonable behavior and poor parenting skills, then take pride in the fact that her son, though not by her side, enjoys everything the Zhou family has to offer without her having to worry about him causing trouble. During the week of suspension, I confiscated Stellan's phone and computer but didn't let him idle. I hired the most renowned private growth coach in the city to take him to activities like live-action CS, off-road racing, and bungee jumping, extreme sports designed to release stress and build courage. Stellan had a blast, completely forgetting about the disciplinary record he had received. A week later, when he returned to school, he became even more unruly, turning into the undisputed little tyrant of Jade Academy. His followers grew in number, and he even started mingling with troublemakers from the streets. His allowance was no longer enough for him, so he began to find ways to deceive Florian, steal cash from the house, and even secretly pawn some of my less frequently worn jewelry. When I discovered the missing jewelry, I didn't make a fuss. Instead, I quietly replaced it with a more advanced safe. Then, I increased Stellan's allowance and told Florian, "The child is growing up, and there are more social engagements and expenses. Our family isn't lacking in this regard, so let's not make things difficult for him." Florian was overwhelmed with a project at the company and didn't want to bother with such trivial matters, so he simply waved it off and let me handle it. In his third year of junior high, Stellan was 16 years old, standing at a height of 1.85 meters and weighing over 200 pounds, with a face full of hardened flesh. Due to long-term unhealthy lifestyle habits and possible hormonal issues, his face was severely broken out with acne, and he even had sparse stubble above his lips, making him look much older and greasier than his actual age. The trouble he caused grew increasingly serious. During an underground street race, he drove the sports car Florian had given him, which was illegally modified, and sped recklessly, crashing into a guardrail and nearly plowing into a crowd. The incident was recorded on video by a fellow troublemaker using a mobile phone and uploaded online. Although Florian quickly used his connections to suppress it, it still caused a stir within certain circles. This time, Florian was truly frightened. He ordered Stellan to be confined to the house, confiscated the car keys, and even, in a rare display of genuine anger, slapped Stellan across the face. Stellan flew into a rage, wrestled with Florian, and nearly pushed him down the stairs. I appeared just in time, crying and shouting as I pulled them apart, shielding Stellan and screaming at Florian, "Are you trying to kill him? He's your son. Can't we talk this through calmly?" Stellan seized the opportunity to run out of the house and disappeared for several days. Florian was so furious that his blood pressure spiked, and he had to be hospitalized for rest and recovery. I knew where Stellan had gone. Conrad told me he was hiding at Alina's place. That foolish woman, Alina, was moved to tears when she saw her son coming to her for help after being wronged, thinking he had finally grown closer to her. She carefully attended to Stellan, cooking him delicious meals, comforting him, and even secretly slipping him money, completely unaware of what kind of monster this son she had secretly swapped had become under my endless indulgence. I was at the hospital taking care of Florian, playing the role of the virtuous wife who was both worried about her husband and heartbroken for her son, but inside, I was sneering. Go ahead, let you mother and son reunite and enjoy this family bliss." On the other hand, Zephyr, as the top scorer in the city's high school entrance exam, was specially admitted to City No. 1 High School, a provincial key school, with full tuition exemption and a scholarship. Professor Lysander's excitement in the email was palpable. This child is exceptionally talented and resilient in character. Given time, he will surely achieve great things. I have recommended him to participate in this year's National High School Mathematics League. If he performs well, he has a chance to join the provincial team and compete for the winter camp and even the national team. My son, Zephyr. I looked at the photo Professor Lysander had attached to the letter. The 16-year-old boy, dressed in his school uniform, stood on the podium, his posture as straight as a pine tree, his features handsome, his gaze calm and determined. He held the top scorer in the high school entrance exam certificate in his hands, with sunlight falling on him, clean and bright. In another folder on my computer, there were the latest photos Conrad had just sent. At the entrance of a brightly lit, bustling bar, Stellan was embracing two scantily clad girls, drunkenly climbing into a sports car, his face a picture of decadent, wasted indulgence. On one side, a hidden gem finally shines, on the other, a gilded exterior conceals a rotten core. Chapter 7. I closed the photos, picked up the phone, and called the principal of Jade Academy. "Principal, hello. Regarding the donation for the expansion of our school library, I'd like to add another contribution. Also, I heard the school has been dealing with some student disputes lately. Stellan is a straightforward child, prone to offending others. I hope you'll keep an eye on him." High school was the final stage of Stellan's complete descent into the abyss, and the starting point for Zephyr's emergence and meteoric rise. Under the pretext of broadening international horizons, I disregarded Florian's hesitation and forcibly enrolled Stellan in Ruehua International Academy, a school that claimed to practice holistic education but was actually known for its extremely lax management and reputation for enrolling wealthy problem children from various countries. Located in the suburbs, the school claimed to have a closed management system, but in reality, its so-called management relied heavily on students' self-discipline and the power of money. The campus was rife with comparisons and various unhealthy habits, and there were even rumors of illicit substances circulating in secret. Stellan thrived in this environment. His obesity, roughness, and extravagance became symbols of coolness and strength. He quickly became the leader of a small clique, leading a group of similarly idle wealthy second-generation peers in skipping classes, street racing, clubbing, and fighting. They turned the school into a chaotic mess, and the teachers dared not intervene, nor could they even if they tried. I visit the school periodically, and each time I go, I either bring takeout from a Michelin-starred restaurant or carry the latest gaming consoles, designer clothes, and shoes. In front of his teachers and classmates, I fuss over him, giving him generous amounts of pocket money and expressing understanding and support for his colorful campus life. Young people should be lively, make more friends, and broaden their horizons. As for studying, just do your best, don't push yourself too hard. The school leadership at Ruehua treats me with great respect, not only because I am one of their biggest donors but also because I am a staunch supporter of their educational philosophy. No matter what trouble Stellan causes at school, it always ends up being swept under the rug, thanks to my generous donations and reasonable communication. Meanwhile, Zephyr, with the top score in the province, qualified for the finals of the National Middle School Mathematics Olympiad. On the eve of the finals, Professor Lysander called me, his tone excited. Zephyr is in excellent form. He has the potential to win gold. The finals are in City B, and the organizers have arranged everything well. It's just that this kid seems to have never traveled far before and is a bit nervous. I gripped the receiver, my knuckles turning white. My son was about to step onto a bigger stage, and I couldn't even go to see him in person. Professor Lysander, I heard my own calm voice say, please take good care of him. As for the competition, just do his best, don't put too much pressure on him. Also, before and after the competition, could you take a few more photos of him? I think we sponsors also need some materials. Of course, of course. Professor Lysander readily agreed. During the days of the finals, I was restless and on edge. On the surface, I was still busy dealing with a new mess Stellan had caused. He got into a bar fight while drunk, smashed a lot of things, and even attracted the attention of the police. While I used money and connections to smooth things over, I also dealt with Florian's complaints. Secretly, I kept a close eye on the news coming from City B. Conrad sent me sporadic reports from the finals through some channels, no photos, just written descriptions. Contestant Zephyr, calm and composed, with clear problem-solving ideas. It wasn't until the afternoon of the final day that my phone suddenly started vibrating wildly with notifications from various news apps, followed by frantic calls from Florian, none of which I answered. I clicked on the top news push video. On the screen was a solemn awards ceremony, with lights sparkling brilliantly. The host announced excitedly, the gold medal winner and first place in this year's National Middle School Mathematics Olympiad is Zephyr. From S Province's #1 middle school. The camera zoomed in on a boy dressed in ordinary sportswear, standing tall and straight like a young poplar tree, as he slowly walked up to the podium. It was him, my son. Zephyr took the shiny gold medal and hung it around his neck, while camera flashes went off one after another. The host handed him the microphone and asked, Zephyr, at this moment, who would you most like to thank? The young man looked up at the camera, his eyes clear and bright, like lakes holding stars. He remained silent for 2 seconds, then spoke clearly and firmly, the person I most want to thank is the stranger who has been anonymously supporting and caring for me all these years. Without her, I could never have stood here. My vision instantly blurred, and all the blood in my body seemed to rush to the top of my head, only to freeze into ice the next second. I covered my mouth tightly, holding back my sobs. 13 years, over 4,700 days and nights, I listened as my son, in front of hundreds of millions of viewers, thanked a stranger. Shortly afterward, Conrad sent me another message. Stellan and his group of troublemaking friends were seeking thrills at a discreet club downtown, suspected of overdosing on a new type of drug. Several of them experienced severe adverse reactions, with some even falling unconscious. The club, fearing trouble, secretly called an ambulance, but the news might not stay hidden for long. Chapter 8. I finally answered Florian's call. On the other end of the line, his voice was panicked. Elsie. Something terrible has happened. Stellan. Stellan has been taken to the hospital. It seems like drug use. The police might be on their way too. You need to come quickly. I put down the phone, leisurely changed into a proper dark-colored suit, applied light makeup, and looked at myself in the mirror, refined, with cold eyes. Finally, the day has come. I drove toward the hospital. On the way, the car radio was broadcasting a news flash. Latest update from our station: the 60th International Mathematical Olympiad has just concluded, and our national team performed exceptionally well, with all 6 members winning gold medals and securing first place in the overall team score with an absolute advantage. Among them, Zephyr, a student from S Province's No. 1 middle school, achieved a perfect score and secured a valuable gold medal for our country. It is reported that Zephyr grew up in an orphanage, with a difficult background, but through remarkable perseverance and talent. The host's voice on the radio was filled with excitement. I turned off the radio. Outside the hospital emergency room, chaos reigned. Florian was pacing like an ant on a hot pan, and Alina had also rushed over upon hearing the news, her makeup smeared from crying. She tried to grab the door of the emergency room but was stopped by a nurse. The police had already arrived and were questioning the staff of the club and a few participants who were still somewhat conscious. I walked over, and Florian, as if seeing a savior, grabbed my arm. Elsie. What do we do? This time seems really serious. The police said it might involve group drug use, and a new type of drug, a significant amount. Stellan is still in critical care. Alina also rushed over, trying to grab my hand, but I avoided her. She cried out, Florian. Elsie. You have to save Stellan. He's still so young. He must have been led astray by others. I glanced at the tightly closed door of the emergency room, then looked at the pale-faced man and woman in front of me, feeling a numb chill in my heart. I turned to the officer in charge, my tone heavy and sincere. Officer, I am the child's mother. The child is still young and doesn't understand things clearly, perhaps he fell in with the wrong crowd. Right now, our biggest concern is the child's safety. As for everything else, we will fully cooperate with the investigation. We will not shirk any responsibility that falls on us. The officer glanced at me and replied in an official tone, First, we need to wait for the doctor to come out and explain the situation. Additionally, we will investigate all other individuals and locations involved in the case. For now, the family should try to stay calm. Just then, a young police officer hurried over and whispered a few words to the lead officer, casting a strange glance in our direction. The officer frowned and said to Florian and me, I'll need the 2 of you, as well as this lady, to come with me to the station to provide a detailed statement. Also, he paused briefly, regarding Stellan's guardianship situation, we may need to conduct further verification. Florian was taken aback. Verify what? We're his parents. The officer didn't say much, just motioned for us to follow. As we trailed behind the police toward the elevator, a sudden commotion erupted from the other end of the hospital corridor. A group of reporters carrying cameras surged in, followed by others holding up phones for live streaming. Their initial target seemed to be the emergency room, but upon spotting us with the police, especially given the distinguished appearance and demeanor of Florian and me, they quickly and keenly redirected their cameras. Are you Stellan's family members? Do you have any comments regarding the group drug use incident that occurred tonight at Twilight Club? Mr. Florian, it is said that your son Stellan is one of the main participants in this incident. Are you aware of this? How do you usually educate your children? Ms. Elsie, as a mother, what are your thoughts on your son's drug use? Do you feel it is a failure in your parenting? The reporter's questions came like a barrage, and the flashing lights were blinding. Florian's face turned pale with anger as he shielded his eyes with his hand and snapped, no comment. The most important thing right now is my son's health. Alina, frightened, hid behind Florian. I kept my head down, tightly pursing my lips, playing the role of a worried, ashamed, and helpless mother, struggling to move forward under the escort of the police. Suddenly, there was an even greater commotion behind the group of journalists. Another wave of reporters crowded around a figure, heading in our direction. Leading the way was a young man dressed in a simple white shirt and jeans. His posture was upright, his features clean and clear, and on his slightly pale, tired face, there was a calmness that seemed beyond his years. Hanging from his chest was an IMO gold medal, gleaming under the lights. Beside him stood a spirited elderly man, none other than Professor Lysander. It was Zephyr. What were they doing here? My steps faltered, and my heart tightened abruptly. Chapter 9. Classmate Zephyr. Congratulations on once again bringing honor to our country. As a rare consecutive full-score champion in IMO history, how do you feel right now? Classmate Zephyr, I heard you rushed to the hospital right after getting off the plane. Are you feeling unwell? Or? Zephyr stopped walking, his gaze calmly sweeping over the reporters crowding around and the chaotic crowd on our side. His eyes seemed to linger on my face for an extremely brief moment, devoid of any emotion, before quickly moving away. He spoke into the microphone, his voice clear and steady, carrying a hint of fatigue from just getting off the plane, but more than that, sincerity. Thank you for your attention. I'm fine. I came to the hospital because my mentor and guide, Professor Lysander, told me that the anonymous benefactor who has supported me for years and changed my fate is currently in this hospital. I rushed here as soon as I got off the plane, hoping to thank her in person. Without her, I wouldn't be where I am today. The reporters immediately seized upon this heartwarming moment, their cameras focusing on Zephyr and Professor Lysander beside him. Professor Lysander affectionately patted Zephyr on the shoulder, but his gaze drifted over the crowd as if searching for something. Eventually, his eyes met mine, and he gave a slight nod. My heart skipped a beat. Did Professor Lysander tell Zephyr? Yes, Professor Lysander knew the anonymous funding channel ultimately led to me, but he only knew I was a kind-hearted individual, unaware of any other details. At this moment, he guided Zephyr here purely out of goodwill, wanting his student to express gratitude. This unexpected turn of events left my mind blank for a moment, but soon, an indescribable bittersweet warmth surged to my eyes. My son was here to thank his benefactor. Under Professor Lysander's guidance, Zephyr pushed through the reporters and walked toward me. He moved steadily, the gold medal swaying slightly on his chest, reflecting the light from the corridor's ceiling lamps. Florian and Alina were still caught in the shock and chaos of their son's drug use, paying little attention to the approaching young man. Zephyr stopped in front of me, standing so close that I could even catch the faint scent of sunlight and books on him, a stark contrast to the disinfectant smell permeating the hospital. He stood a good half-head taller than me, needing to lower his gaze slightly to meet my eyes. His expression was clear and bright, carrying a maturity beyond his years, now brimming with sincere gratitude. He looked at me, speaking with great seriousness and solemnity. His voice was not loud, yet it clearly reached the ears of everyone around who was listening intently. You must be Ms. Elsie, right? Professor Lysander told me everything. Thank you for your selfless help all these years. Without your support and encouragement, I could never have entered the world of mathematics or come this far. He paused, seeming a bit nervous, but his gaze remained firm. I know this request might be a bit presumptuous, but, in my heart, you are like a lamp, illuminating what could have been a dim life for me. I grew up in an orphanage, without a mother. If you don't mind, could I call you Mom? His words were sincere and fervent, carrying the unique shyness and longing of youth. The surroundings fell silent instantly. Even the reporters who had been surrounding Florian and Alina, pressing them about the drug case, quietly turned their cameras to capture this deeply moving scene, the math champion with a difficult past, pouring out his heartfelt emotions to the anonymous benefactor who had supported him for years, pleading for a bond of kinship. My tears instantly overflowed, not an act, but genuine, overwhelming emotion. My son, my flesh and blood, separated from me for 18 years, was standing right in front of me. So outstanding, so wonderful, yet unaware of his true identity, simply holding a heart full of gratitude, wanting to call out Mom. I choked up, almost unable to speak, and could only nod desperately, reaching out to touch his arm but fearing it might be too abrupt. Just then, a female reporter standing to the side, holding a camera, looked at us and suddenly let out a soft huh, exclaiming, "Wait, have you noticed? Ms. Elsie and Zephyr, there seems to be a slight resemblance in their eyes and brows? Especially the shape of their noses and eyes." Her words were like a stone thrown into a calm lake. Instantly, all the reporters' gazes swept back and forth between Zephyr's face and mine, like searchlights. Under the scrutiny, that sense of resemblance seemed to faintly emerge, similarly narrow and straight noses, similarly double-lidded eyes with slightly upturned corners, similarly thin lips. It seems, maybe a little? Is it the angle? Or, now that you mention it, there really is a resemblance. The reporters whispered among themselves, their cameras zooming in even closer on our faces. Florian also heard the commotion. He looked over in confusion, his gaze shifting between Zephyr and me. At first, he was puzzled, but then an expression of disbelief and uncertainty gradually spread across his pale face. Alina, completely absorbed in her own panic, didn't notice. Zephyr was also stunned. He clearly hadn't expected the reporter to say that, and he glanced at me somewhat helplessly before instinctively touching his own face. Chapter 10. Amid this strange and delicate silence and scrutiny, the door to the emergency room opened once again, and a doctor and 2 police officers walked out. The lead officer had a serious expression and was holding a folder. He walked straight toward us, his gaze sweeping over Florian and me before finally settling on me. "Ms. Elsie," the officer's tone was businesslike, yet carried a heavy weight, "regarding Stellan's case, we have some urgent matters that require your verification. During Stellan's admission examination and documentation, we collected his biological samples as per regulations and conducted a rapid comparison with the immediate family information database." He opened the folder, took out a report, and presented it before me, simultaneously exposing it to countless cameras. The words on the conclusion page of the report were clear and piercing. "Based on DNA comparison, Elsie and Stellan are excluded from having a biological parent-child relationship." The results indicate, the officer's voice echoed in the dead silence of the corridor, "that you are not Stellan's biological mother. Were you aware of this?" Boom. If the earlier murmurs among the reporters were merely ripples, then the officer's words were nothing short of a deep-sea bomb. Everyone, including Zephyr and Professor Lysander, looked at me in shock, then abruptly turned their gaze toward the emergency room, then toward Florian, whose face had turned ashen, and finally, their eyes collectively focused once again on Zephyr and me. The earlier speculation about similar eyes and eyebrows and this earth-shattering DNA report instantly formed a chilling chain of associations. Elsie is not Stellan's biological mother. Then whose son is Stellan? This orphan champion Zephyr, who resembles Elsie in the eyes and eyebrows and just wanted to recognize her as his mother. Could it be? I felt as if I had been nailed to the spot by this conclusion and the surrounding gazes. The color drained from my face, and my body swayed slightly, as though unable to bear this sudden, absurd, and terrifying truth. I abruptly turned my head, my eyes fixed intently on Florian, filled with a desperate, searching mix of despair and anger. My voice was hoarse and trembling, laced with utter disbelief. "Florian, what is this?" "Stellan. Stellan isn't my son? Then who is he? Where is my son? What happened to the child I gave birth to back then? Tell me." I rushed forward, grabbing Florian's arm and shaking it forcefully, my nails nearly digging into his flesh. Tears streamed down my face, half acted, half the pain that had been suppressed for 18 years and could finally erupt at this moment. Florian winced in pain from my grip, his face turning from deathly pale to ashen. His lips trembled, his eyes darted around, and he stammered incoherently, "Elsie, you have to listen to me. This is a misunderstanding. Maybe the hospital made a mistake." "A mistake?" I screamed hysterically, pointing toward the emergency room. "Isn't that your son lying in there? Can DNA be wrong? Florian, what have you been hiding from me? Where is my child? My breakdown and accusations, Florian's panic and denials, along with the cold DNA report and the increasingly striking resemblance between Zephyr and me, formed a shocking scene. All the reporters held their breath, their cameras greedily capturing every moment. At this moment of extreme chaos, with the truth on the verge of being revealed, Alina, who had been slumped nearby, her spirit on the brink of collapse after her son's arrest for drug use, finally had her psychological defenses shattered by the relentless onslaught of stimuli. She saw Florian stammering, saw me heartbroken, then saw the report proving I wasn't Stellan's biological mother, and watched as the reporters kept shifting their cameras between me and Zephyr, already whispering words like child swap and switched at birth. Her last shred of sanity snapped. Ah! Alina let out a piercing scream, scrambled up from the ground, and lunged at Florian like a madwoman, then pointed at me, before finally locking her gaze fiercely on Zephyr. Her eyes filled with twisted jealousy, fear, and despair, she screamed uncontrollably, "Yes. It was me. I swapped the children. So what? Why should your son get to live a high-class life while mine suffers with me? My son is Florian's flesh and blood. He's the one who should inherit everything. Your son, that little bastard of yours, deserves to rot in an orphanage for the rest of his life." She glared venomously at Zephyr, then looked at me and his similar faces as if seeing a ghost. "No. Impossible. How could you possibly be her son? Her son should be picking through trash. He should be hauling bricks on a construction site." Her words, like the final piece of a puzzle, fell with a resounding crash, piecing together a complete and horrifying truth. The scene erupted into chaos. The reporters went nearly wild, the flashlights merging into a continuous blaze of light. Florian's face turned ashen as he abruptly pushed Alina away, trying to cover her mouth, but it was already too late. Chapter 11. Zephyr froze entirely. He whipped his head around to look at me, then at Alina, who seemed to have lost her mind, and finally at Florian. In his eyes, which had always been calm and clear, a storm of emotions surged: shock, confusion, realization, pain, and finally, settling into a profound, enlightened sorrow. As for me, the moment Alina screamed out the truth, it was as if all my strength had been drained. I released my grip on Florian, staggered back a step, and then, slowly, ever so slowly, shifted my gaze toward Zephyr. My eyes were filled with endless, genuine pain, guilt, disbelief, and a kind of cautious, almost humble ecstasy of something lost and found again. My lips trembled violently, tears blurred my vision, but I tried hard to look at him, at my son, at this child who had just wanted to call me Mom. You. We. I reached out my hand, my fingertips trembling uncontrollably, pointing at Zephyr, then at myself, unable to form a complete sentence for a long time. Zephyr stood there as if struck by lightning, staring blankly at me, tears streaming down my face as I reached out to him. Surrounding us were the frantic flashes of cameras, the clamor of reporters vying for questions, Alina's hysterical sobs, Florian's despairing silence, and the voices of police trying to maintain order. Yet all of it felt distant, as if time had come to a standstill. Then, I saw the mist in Zephyr's eyes finally condense into tears, rolling down his cheeks. His lips trembled, and from the depths of his soul, with a choked sob, with certainty, and with the resonance of 18 years of missing blood ties, he softly, yet heavily, uttered the word, "Mom." Mom? That single word, having traversed 18 years of separation and conspiracy, finally took root. I could no longer hold back, stepping forward to pull him tightly into my arms. His body stiffened at first, then gradually relaxed, and finally, he hugged me back with equal force. The gold medal pressed between us, but its cold touch was no match for the warmth and bittersweet ache of our shared bloodline. All around, the noise was deafening. The reporters couldn't wait to broadcast this shocking twist live. Math Olympiad champion turns out to be the true heir in a high society baby swap case. Vicious woman swaps lives, birth mother endures for 18 years before reunion. Fake young master arrested for drug use, true genius returns with honors. One shocking headline after another swept across the internet at an explosive pace. Under the full media coverage and strict police supervision, Florian and Alina, their faces ashen, were taken away separately for investigation. What awaited them was not only the fallout from Stellan's drug case but also criminal charges for swapping the babies and abandoning their own child all those years ago. And I, holding tightly to my son's hand that I had regained, left the chaotic vortex at the center of it all, accompanied by my lawyer and Professor Lysander. 3 months later, Stellan was formally charged with multiple offenses, including organizing drug use and allowing others to use drugs on his premises. Florian tried everything to help him, but the evidence was overwhelming, and public opinion was too strong to overcome. Alina, as one of the masterminds behind the baby-switching incident years ago, faced charges alongside Florian for abandonment and child abduction. Florian's company saw its stock price plummet, partners terminated contracts one after another, and the situation became increasingly precarious. I, without hesitation, filed for divorce from Florian. As he was the party at significant fault in the marriage, coupled with suspicions of transferring and concealing marital assets, the divorce proceedings went exceptionally smoothly under the pressure of a strong legal team and public opinion. I not only regained my personal company that rightfully belonged to me but also legally acquired 50% of Florian's company shares, becoming the largest shareholder. To protect his remaining assets and reduce his sentence, Florian agreed to almost all the terms. On the day of the divorce, the sun was shining brightly. After signing the papers, I walked out of the courthouse to find Zephyr waiting at the entrance. He was dressed in a simple white shirt, standing tall and straight with clear, bright eyes, holding 2 cups of hot drinks in his hands. "Mom," he handed me one of the cups naturally, his smile clean and warm. "Professor Lysander mentioned that there's an international mathematics symposium next month, and he wants to take me along to broaden my horizons." I took the warm cup, linked my arm with his, and felt the warmth of the sun on my skin. "Go ahead. Whatever you want to do or wherever you want to go, I'll support you." I look at my son, who is so outstanding and makes me so proud, then glance back at the solemn and dignified gate of the courthouse, as if I can see the defeated faces of Florian and Alina inside. I raised someone else's son to ruin, spent my ex-husband's money, and took half of his empire. As for me, I still have my own career and my long-lost, radiant biological son. This ending is just perfect. "Zephyr," I say softly, with a smile spreading from the corners of my eyes, "what would you like for dinner?" "I'll cook for you." He thought for a moment, a bit embarrassed. "Braised pork?" "It seems, it's been a long time since I've had it." "All right." I nodded, tightening my grip on his arm. "Let's go home, Mom will make it for you." The sunlight stretched our shadows long, clinging closely together as we walked toward a new, bright future.